There you go. How are you doing, Steve?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Doing pretty amazing. Glad you're here.
Exciting to be here.
I was-
Thank you for having me on.
I was supposed to be with you last semester, but then things got a little bit.
Hey, that's life. Don't feel too bad about it.
That's
I'm glad we were able to find the time. So
so. Obviously, I know who you are, but not everybody else does. So,
Yeah.
do you mind just introducing yourself?
sure, happy to. So my name's Steve. A bit about myself is I was born in the States, but my family moved to the UK when I was just a baby, about 6 months years old.
I didn't know that. I thought you were like straight from
I was actually, can you guess where I was born in the States?
Philly.
No, I was born in Columbus, Ohio.
You didn't even give me a chance to. You didn't give me a chance to guess again.
But yeah, so have some Midwest charm in me, I guess.
Okay.
Came back to the States for undergrad, so studied at the University of Chicago, and then stayed in Chicago for a little bit professionally. So started my career working in consulting for a smaller company, basically went bust during the pandemic, moved very quickly into the tech world. I was working with DoorDash for a few years, was in Chicago, and then that job took me out to the Bay Area. I was working there in the Bay Area and then moved back into management consulting for a few years before coming to business school, and was at Wharton doing my MBA for the last 2 years. So recently graduated in May and then moving to New York in a month or so to rejoin BCG as a consultant. So looking forward to that. And the last few years has been incredible being here in Philadelphia, being able to take a break from work and being able to have some time to introspect, which is rare in my life at this point.
Oh yeah, introspection is rare. Why? Because of the fast pace of the industry that you work in.
Yeah, I think once you're out in the professional world, I think having that time to think, is this something that I enjoy? How do we think about, making the most of our both career, but also our life, and thinking about our values isn't something you necessarily get the chance to do day in, day out when you're working professionally. And so being back in a social, academic, business school environment was something that maybe I didn't even appreciate applying, but once I kind of went through that experience was something that I really appreciated.
I mean, at least there's hope.
Yeah.
Some people just describe professional life as your life is over.
Yeah.
Like all you do now is work. And I mean, I don't think it's true. Maybe it is in some instances. But the main thing that I wanted to talk to you about today was decision making.
Yeah.
Because you make decisions for a living pretty
Mhm.
much. Had my friend here the other day who's also a consultant at EY, and he said that he just pretty much described his work as I help people fix their problems.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's pretty fair. But how do you get to fixing a problem? So as you know, I write quite a lot.
Mhm.
So I wrote you a poem.
Oh, wow.
You want to read it?
I'd love to listen to you.
I asked the question like rhetorically because I obviously want to read it. I don't want you to read it first.
Mm-hmm.
So here's how it goes. What is the reason for my decision? Is my framework flexible? Must it always rely on precision? Let me start.
Sorry, please, yeah.
You know why I started laughing? It's because it reminded me of Dr. Seuss.
Two great writers.
It's like, okay, so let me start again. That was funny. I hope it was. What is the reason for my decision? Is my framework flexible? Must it always rely on precision? Or do I only make choices based off my feelings? Or am I overly moved by what happened in the past? Oh, how I wish I knew the reason. Maybe then these choices would have some meaning. Is this really so much of me to ask? Well, maybe, just maybe, I wish not to know. Maybe my ignorance could be a protective mask.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course, and this is for you,
Oh,
signed down by me, your name down there and the date.
too kind. Thank
I'm
you.
going to forward that for you. I like to forward things a certain way.
Yeah. Tell me about your writing process for it. Were you sitting outside? Were you sitting in this room? When did the idea spark you?
That's quite a deep question. You're asking me to reveal a part of my creative process.
If you're willing to share, of course.
And the reason why I'm willing to share with you is because we met in a very creative and collaborative
We
environment
did.
in an acting module. And for anyone who knows how acting courses work up then, it's a very, you can't afford to be someone who's shy. You can, but by the time you leave the class, even if you're shy outside, you're not shy with the people in the class.
Yes.
So yeah, taking us back to that, we met in an acting class. So where was I when I was writing this? I was actually sitting right over there
Okay.
when I was writing it, but I was thinking about it throughout the course of the day. So I like to think things through. And then when I sit down, the pen just starts to flow.
Amazing.
That's how it's always been. So here is your note. You can read it later.
I probably will. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Sure. So I don't know.
It's very safe.
Yeah.
So
Keep it safe. So the whole point of that was me thinking through choices and what it means to make a choice, and if being intelligent or being experienced, or the two tying it together, or the inexistence of those two things affect how we make a decision, and I guess consequently the outcome.
Yeah.
Because you make decisions for a living, I wanted to talk to you about that, and I wanted to just hear what are some of the ways in which you process information when you're given it, because people give you a problem, and how do you break it down? Let's just start from there.
Yeah, and it's a great question. It's something that every day we probably make, I don't know the right number, but thousands of decisions, whether they're larger for businesses or smaller decisions. Should I intervene in a meeting at this point? Or what am I going to have for lunch? And all of these things can sometimes take a lot of mental calibration to think through. And I think particularly over the last few years professionally, one thing that has been a constant focus for me has been, is this a decision that I need to exert a lot of brain power behind? Or is this something that I can just trust my gut and decide a lot quicker? When I put myself in your shoes as an undergrad, I think maybe a bit of an overthinker and would try to think about every decision with a lot of weight and think through, do I have sufficient data or evidence? Am I thinking about things the right way? Rethinking about past decisions I made. Should I have approached this differently? Could I have done better? And I think of the key value that at least I've gained in my career is, it's okay to not have the perfect outcome of a decision. It's okay to not have all of the data to think about when is the time to commit to something, when is the time to move something forward, when to even propose a solution that you're thinking about. And that's okay. And what I've learned is, rather than reflecting on that decision, I'm able to instead reflect on whether the decision was successful or whether the decision failed. And that to me has given me a lot more data to understand, am I taking the right amount of time in a decision? Am I socializing this decision with enough people? To your point, when you talked about, consulting was solving people's problems, I've almost found it helping people structure problems. And so much sometimes of finding the right solution is really, are you asking the right question? And then in order to solve for that question, think through, how are they thinking about it? What is the right context in terms of the domain in which it's in? Who are the key stakeholders? Who will this impact? Really, are there clear objectives? And is everyone aligned on that? Because if the answer is no, then you're likely unable to get to the right solution there. And so in that professional domain, this may be a long-winded way of answering your question, thinking through when to stop and pause and bring people along to come up with what that solution might be is something that I've learned to take time with over my career. But then when it's something that needs a quick judgment call, or is something that I have experience with that I feel I can justify quickly, then I might be more willing to just move forward with that if I feel I have that experiential expertise that I can bring forward to that solution. And then outside of the professional realm and the personal realm, I think that is able to translate quite effectively as well. When you're socializing with friends, when you're coming up with plans, when you're thinking about a large decision around, renting a house versus moving versus going on holiday, understanding what should be a more thoughtful decision, like let's say choosing where to stay and where you want to stay on holiday versus picking a restaurant to go to. Some people might take more time for some of these decisions versus others, but for me, learning then when to move fast versus slow, and you might be familiar with this kind of type 1 versus type 2 thinking. And I think sometimes understanding in yourself when you feel confident in that type of modal distinction, I think is something that's allowed me, I think, to make decisions more accurately and more carefully over my career as well.
I would love to say I agree,
Mm-hmm.
but that bit that I just don't have.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have, but I have less of,
Mm-hmm.
is the experience.
Yeah.
When you say that sometimes you need to figure out where you're putting in your attention.
Yeah.
I guess from a human system standpoint, we all have majority of us have a certain amount of attention at the start of the day.
Yeah.
And throughout the day, we choose where we put that.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes when things get really hectic and you get more experience and there's more demands on you, you need to choose what battles to fight.
Right.
And that's what I'm getting from that. I would say I understand that, but it would be wrong for me to say that I fully
Yeah.
fully understand it because I still feel like I have a lot to learn. Not that I'm ignorant or anything, but you know what I mean. And it ties into something as well that I was reading today. And this might be one of the only stats that I have there. I'm not really a big stats person.
Yeah.
In America, I love statistics, everything, stat this, stat that. 55 yards, I'm just watching the game. Okay, so this is Gary Klein. And Gary Klein is an American cognitive psychologist who studies how real experts, firefighters, military commanders, doctors, make split-second decisions under pressure without relying on formal analysis. There's a quote from him, and the quote is, "The most valuable insight I have made about how people make decisions is that when they become skilled, they don't have to make decisions or choices between options. Instead, they can draw on experience and the patterns they have acquired to recognize what to do, ignore other options. And this is the basis of recognition primed decision, RPD model my colleagues and I described 30 years ago." So this is him talking about something in one of his books. And I've noticed this as well because when there's that difference in experience, the way you make a decision could offend me because I'm thinking, okay, we need to think about this logically, but you've experienced this thing like 10 times. So this then ties into working in a team.
Yeah.
Because having mentors in a team, having people that are experienced is great. And having the young people as well is fantastic too. I mean, it brings life and energy to the space. How have you navigated that in the early parts of your career of wanting to be curious, wanting to find out everything, and then being maybe sometimes paired with someone who's been in the job or industry for 20 plus, 30 plus years, who knows that this issue, or who has a strong will that this issue is either not solvable or is not worth solving? How did you navigate that, I guess, rejection of your curiosity?
Yeah, and it's I think a really valuable statistic, and I think it is something that you see a lot in consulting. When you think about how a consulting team is typically staffed, it's varied a lot, but particularly when you think about how the industry has changed, it really has become more of this expert-based model when information is so abundant. You can think about LLMs, anyone can type something in and learn about an industry, right? But this pattern recognition piece is where a consulting company versus, let's say, you are in the CPG industry. If you're working with one specific business, you are limited to the experience of that business. Whereas a consulting company, they've seen the cycle and flow of several of these businesses. And so they have a little bit more of that pattern recognition that they can provide as that expertise. And where I think the contradiction then lies is, let's say you're a junior analyst coming into a consulting company. You're working for a company with this expertise, but you don't have it. And they trust you to have that cognition and that ability to be analytical and think through problems, but you lack that real understanding of the pattern recognition. And that is, I think, a big conflict and something that people need to overcome. And so, for example, in my early career, this might take place in, let's say, what they call at BCG, case team meetings. And you'll go in, you'll present what you've been working on and what you have planned for the next meeting. And you'll get feedback. And a lot of times, sometimes you might put your sweat and tears and grit and hard work into building this perfect deck. And sometimes it might be as simple as one of the experts on the team, whether it's a more senior partner, or sometimes they are these kind of internal experts that provide their advice is, this isn't going to work, or this isn't what we were thinking about. And I think sometimes the natural inclination is to want to justify the work you've done. Oh, we've seen this data, or we really believe this. And I think that can come from two places. One is you do feel that way because you have looked at specific data sets and you really do feel that that's rationalized. But then I think just the second place that this comes from, and I think this is quite natural, is almost this place of defensiveness sometimes, where you've worked hard on something and you should take pride in your work. And so you want to be able to champion the ideas that you have, and you don't want to feel like you want to redo anything because you might feel that's a personal failure, or you might feel that maybe this isn't what they were looking at. And I think particularly early in your career, it's about responding to that criticism as best as you can. And even calling it criticism maybe isn't fair. It's just having to pivot and take stock of what's being shared. You might have done nothing wrong. You might have analyzed the right data. You might have come up with the right hypothesis, and you might have presented it in the best possible way. But maybe just based on that expert's knowledge and the patterns that they're understanding, that is not necessarily maybe the best way that they think you could have brought that forward. What I'll say though, to caveat all of that, is that still doesn't mean that you should necessarily change your hypothesis, or you shouldn't have presented the same data in that way, because so many situations are unique, and being able to at least share where you came from. Sometimes experts can change their opinion too. And I think the best experts are open to understanding that idea. And that's why they have these junior analysts as parts of the team. And being able to interact with, call it this song and dance of both changing tact when needed, but also being able to push ideas when they're open to it, I think results in the best outcome sometimes for teams. And understanding when and how best to push back as, let's say, a consultant is a skill that even then you kind of build your own pattern recognition to. Oh, someone feels really strongly about this and we should change tack. Great. Or someone feels strongly about this. This feels like an opportunity for me to push back because I have a really strong intuition myself about why this might drive a better outcome. And that push and pull is something that continually takes time. It's not something that can ever really be perfected, I would say. And you're going to change that based on who you're speaking to and the ways in which you communicate. But I think is a really valuable asset to have in your career as well.
I would definitely agree, because for that one, I can actually agree, because I think it's a healthy mix, a healthy balance.
Yeah.
And when it then comes to the distribution of, I guess, power, even within an organization, that's where it's really important to have the right people in the right spaces, in the right teams.
Yeah.
Because some spaces, for example, like if you're in an actuarial science department and all that, and some sort of company, I won't say it's very cutthroat, but it's either your numbers are right or they're wrong. But in spaces where you're like in a think tank, like making decisions, then it makes sense to have a good mix of people. So that balance of having experience and having that curiosity it's very case dependent, and it's one of those things where you can't really go to a book and say, this is how you do it and this is how you don't do it, But if we are then to remove the safeties a little bit, little guardrails, whatever you want to call them, and backtrack a little bit to our acting class. And I didn't actually ask you, why did you, for reference, because nobody else knows this, maybe some people do, we took the same acting class, The Voice of the Actor.
That's right.
One of the best classes I've taken at the school by far. And I know why I took it. I don't know why you took why. I always get there. You get to an acting class and you see different kinds of people. And you're like, what are these guys doing here? I want an easy grade. I'm like, it's not that easy. And then someone else like, oh, I'm interested. What was your reason?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you take the MBA curriculum, there's a lot of core classes you need to take as an MBA student, amongst finance, amongst accounting, marketing, business economics. And you have the ability as a graduate student to take typically around 2 credits outside of Wharton. And I would say a lot of students don't exercise that ability. Sometimes you're confined to Huntsman Hall, as they call it, and taking these sets of classes. And most classes within Huntsman at Wharton, particularly as an MBA student, are around 72 seats, auditorium style. There's some elements of participation, but more so because it factors into a grade and you want to challenge yourself to speak 2-3 times. And some classes are 6 weeks long, some classes are 12 weeks long, and you don't really form great connections with other students because of just the nature of the structure of the classroom. Maybe you're in project teams, but even then things might feel quite transactional or really quick in terms of the ways in which these assignments are actually executed. And in addition to that, that business way of thinking is one element of academics. When I did my undergrad at UChicago, it was very much a core curriculum. And so I was able to learn things from a range of different disciplines and subjects. And I found myself really learning a lot and really challenging myself. When I put myself back to being in the UK for sixth form, you specialize quite early in the UK. And I had taken 4 subjects my final 2 years of high school. And so as an undergrad, being able to take a range of subjects, many of which I hadn't studied in a while, like physical sciences versus languages, really found myself broadening the way I was thinking about things. And I thought a similar mindset could apply here at Penn as a graduate student. And so my first year, I wasn't able to take any classes outside of Wharton. But then my second year, the first semester, I took a screenwriting class, kind of intro to screenwriting. And I've been interested in film for a while. I never really studied it formally during my time at college, but I really enjoyed kind of watching different types of films, being able to discuss film with other people. I led the cinema club at Wharton in the MBA program, and being able to think about one specific discipline, screenwriting, over the course of a semester was something that was really exciting to me. And I was able to finish the class with a draft of a screenplay, which was something I took a lot of pride in, and it's something that I now have. And I can think back at all of the classes I've taken at Wharton. I have a bunch of essays from some of these business classes, but I'll probably never look at them again. But my screenplay always had. And I think that's something that I really enjoyed. But one thing that I enjoyed the most about it was the fact it was very similar to our acting class. About 12 students. Every week we'd workshop around 3 students' work. Professor Kathy was incredible at getting engagement from everyone, being able to provide feedback. And what you were able to learn is what everyone's interests were, what excited people. We would kind of read them out as if we were actors within that class. And as a result of hearing people say your words, it really brought the scripts to life in quite a unique way. And at the end of the semester, you might see where this is going, is really enjoyed it. It's probably one of my favorite classes that I took at Penn. And my goal was, I really felt the academic experience is so much more than just what you can take independently and the content that you can learn, but that ability to engage with other students and get to know other people is, I think, one of the most rich things you can gain from your time in college. And it was something I loved from my time at U Chicago, and something that maybe I felt was lacking as an MBA student at Wharton. And so taking these, call it undergraduate classes, which are smaller size, challenging you to think about something in a new way, was something that I put a lot of stock in and was something I was really excited to do. And so when that screenwriting class wrapped up at the end of my first semester, I knew I wanted to take something. And the question really was, what would that be? And so half of me was thinking, do I want to take more of an analytical film class? Do I want to take another screenwriting class? But one thing that I thought would stretch me further was to take an acting class. And so you can probably draw me, why intro to voice acting versus like intro to acting. The short answer is, I don't think to me it would have made a huge impact. The voice acting seemed quite unique in at least the course description, thinking about voice, how we can use exercises for our voice, how we can think about the ways in which we present ourselves, speak both confidently and fluidly, was something that immediately, even in my mind, felt applicable to any setting that you're in. Whether you're an actor, whether you're a consultant, whether you're working in tech, whether you're a politician, being able to do that felt like a core skill that I would be able to gain. And so when you factored that on top of the fact you'd get to work with and learn from so many other people within the class, within that same small group environment, was something that I was really thrilled to get my teeth into. So forgive me, probably a long answer to why voice acting, but was, again, to your point, one of the most enjoyable classes as well that I took at Penn, and something that I'm really grateful I had the opportunity to do.
I'm beyond grateful for it as well. And I mean, the people you get to meet in these classes and all that, I think is what makes it all worthwhile, because you're just able to witness someone else, grow. Someone else who's absolutely, you're not shy. Someone who's really shy, like, be able to actually speak up at the end and actually act and use their body to convey a message. It's beautiful. And I think what makes it special for me is that we do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
We do it every day without noticing it. We do it every day. We also notice it as well. And sometimes we feel guilty about it. Sometimes when I tell people that I like to act, and I'm doing a production soon, actually, I told you about it. I'm doing
a new production or
a new one? Yeah.
Oh, exciting!
I'm doing a new production soon, and I usually lead with, I'm an engineer, before I say I'm an actor, because people probably won't take you seriously. And I'm not an actor, because I don't like how that sounds. Make it seem like you're living life on fake mode. It doesn't make sense to me. But what's pretty much going on, or what I've learned from like the acting, is that you're being aware and intentional of the small things that make up the big picture, of how you look away and how you look at someone, how like that different contrast between looking away and looking at someone conveys some sort of message. And it's learning how to use your body to convey messages, and we do it all the time. And when it comes to decision making, one thing that I really battled with the first time, or that I learned, I guess, was that in the intro to acting class, not the voice of the actor one, the one I did the previous year, I don't know when it was, but before this class, was the part on planning and being prepared and having information and being able to present it. Oftentimes in serious classes, you are doing impromptu things. You are really, there's no time for you to think. You have to really act on what you're doing. You have to really be switched on. And there's a stats that I was reading the other day that said like 60 to 80% of the decisions that athletes make in their sport during game time or wherever it is, there's usually like muscle memory. It's not like so it's not analytical, like, okay, so this is the problem, this is what we do, and then I need to do this. No, like you just really have to trust your body, and Sarah says that a lot. How does, I don't know, that's the lesson that I have. But what, I don't know for you, what is that something that's tied into how you make decisions as well? Because I think it's really difficult to take these classes and put yourself out there and act and not draw from the beautiful nature of the way things are just so impromptu. So things, you have experience, but I'm sure in that class there were so many times where you didn't know what was going on, but you had to make sure you convey some sort of message. Is that some sort of lesson that you think you can take into other parts of your life?
Yeah, and I think if you almost isolated even that last statement, right, of having to figure things out almost on the fly, you'll find that in any professional domain. And what I think is so crystallized from that acting class is you do have that ability to do both that fly reactive type decision making, along with that preparation, the thoughtfulness, the understanding of what good looks like. Am I thinking about the right motivations for this character before I give a monologue? How should I think about some of these smaller things? Because I think what the class demonstrates, and then where I think this is so applicable to the real world, is you almost need to practice both to become an expert and to become great at something. You want to understand almost like the theory or the method behind something. And so in the acting class, it's understanding, what are the objectives of this character? Am I thinking about the words in the right way? Am I taking this Shakespeare and paraphrasing it to make sure that I really understand it? But then also, am I doing some of these games? Am I reacting on the fly? Because not everything's going to go to plan when you forget a line, or you're doing a scene with someone and something maybe doesn't go the way you expect it to, or an audience member is laughing more than they should, and then suddenly you're having to react in a different sort of way. And I can give you any example of the professional world in consulting. Someone asks a question you weren't expecting, or a meeting doesn't go to plan, and so suddenly they want to pivot strategy and you realize you don't have the data to support it. And so you need to find that reaction from somewhere, but you also understand through the more methodical work that you've done the type of analysis or the type of data that you want to pull up to the surface. And you then can understand which of those elements to bring up in order to drive forward a solution. And what I think is so great about the acting class as well is you learn how to do all of that whilst acting confident and whilst acting like you're in control of the situation. And, I don't love the idiom, faking it until you make it, but you'll find that really does come into effect in so many aspects of life, where if you're a junior analyst in any professional environment, and maybe you're experiencing this in your internship as well, just pretend like you know what's going on, and it's okay if you don't. But almost saying, this is my plan, this is what I'm going to do. Let me know if you expect me to change anything to your manager, versus saying, I don't know what to do. You're basically saying the same thing, but the way in which you present your ideas confidently can come across in such a different way. And so that kind of mental framing of then appearing that you are confident and you have the balls in your grasp to really achieve what you want, while still getting input from people and not being stubborn to a specific way of doing something, I think is a skill set that really can take you far in many, both professional and personal domains as well.
Yeah, it's something really special about moving with just enough information.
Right.
And it takes a lot of courage to do that. And I'm sure that it takes a lot of courage to do that. And I'm sure that the theater in itself is a true testament of that. That you don't have all the information, or you get given a couple of lines. We've done some exercises in the past where you are given one line. I think we did it. Then the other person is given another line. So pretty much what happens, you're paired. You're paired with one person is paired with the other. And one of those individuals is given a specific line. So I remember for me, it was I need you to tell him to stop. That was my line. I couldn't use any other line. That's my only line. And then the other lady's line, who I was, I guess, acting with, her line was, "No, I'm sorry, but I can't do that." So what it pretty much was I would go up to her and say, "I need you to tell him to stop." And she'd be, "No, I'm sorry, I can't do that." And then Sarah, our instructor, would be like, "You need to do something more, like do something different." And then I would cry. And it's the first time I've cried on command. I started crying and I was like, "I need you to tell him to stop." I started crying. I'm like, "Why the heck am I crying?" And she kept on saying like, "No, I'm sorry, I can't do that." But the whole dynamic of it started to shit. I tried to get angry. I need you to tell him to stop. I need to do this. And I tried so many different things to get what I want, but I only had one line. And I think it's so applicable to everyday life because it's not like you have all the information. You know, you go to even a math class, you solve problems that have all the information, and then eventually they give you less and less of that information. It's pretty much preparing you for day-to-day life. That's pretty much what it is. That's what I think even being at school and all that is about. It's not really about, hey, did you learn how to do this? No, like you're just pretty much being told. Because for me, how old am I? 21. I'm still like, I'm finishing up my program. People will come to me and say, "Oh, you're studying this, right? Can you fix that?" I'm like, "Bro, I don't know how to fix that." But you don't say I don't know how to fix that. You figure it out. And there's a really strong and beautiful part about figuring things out and being able to, I don't say get what you want, but I guess as Sarah says, get what you want using one line. And it's crazy how when I use the tactic of like almost crying, that tactic worked the most, more than the anger, more than trying to be indifferent. But that taught me a lot that it's not all about how you use your words, how you use the information. It's not all about the information you have, but it's about how you use it.
Right.
And yeah, so for yourself, I guess moving forward into like things that are more industry specific for you, what are some of the anchors that you have when information is scarce? So for some people, they probably have a mentor who leads and guides them. For someone else, it could be religion. For someone else, it could be whatever it is to keep you sane. Because yes, your work is great, but it's very demanding. And everybody knows that it's very demanding. And that's how a lot of people, I think, even respect the work you do. But for yourself, what's something that keeps you grounded?
Yeah. And I think it's going back to when I was sharing about what made the MBA such a special experience. And I kind of talked about this ability of introspection. But I think one layer deeper than that, it's also that ability to think about what it is that really brings me joy. So that when I go back out into the professional world, I know that I have, call it, some of these foundational blocks of things that give me this joy, that allow me to stay grounded, that allow me to calibrate whatever stresses in the professional world, whatever stress I'm trying to deal with in terms of, work and promotion and timelines and figuring things out. Understanding what it is that gives me joy is something that I think I've been able to figure out a lot more here. So some examples of that, as an athlete yourself, I'm sure you can relate, but playing soccer for me is something that I love. And I think finding the right way to do that, to push myself during a busy work week is tough, but knowing how I feel after and how it makes me feel more relaxed has been something that I've loved doing the last 2 years and something that immediately I want to create as a habit forming for when I go back into the professional world. So I was telling you before this podcast started, playing some pickup soccer this morning and signed up for the next week. And for the next month, I'll continue to do so that I've established those habits. And then thinking about other types of exercise to keep my mind working sharp as well, whether it's
to your point as well, like with that part, what you said there just really struck something in my heart. And I played some soccer yesterday.
Yeah.
For the first time in a while. And I've realized that I absolutely completely fell off. And it's something that's been hard for me to handle. So just a little warning when you go to futsal, don't expect too much.
That's okay.
I still need to I don't know if I need to get back or if I just wasn't good to begin with. But yeah, it's not looking good.
For what it's worth, as a college athlete yourself, I'm sure you'll have at least way more fitness and stamina behind your body than I do at this point. So, any technical proficiency, I think you'll more than make up for that in terms of the ability that you have. But I think sports, one thing, I think having both the physical, but then also like that mental stimulus as well is really important. And being able to switch mental modes between work and other things that I enjoy, I think is really important. As I was talking about why I wanted to take the acting class, I maybe didn't say it directly, but it's like this idea of learning and pushing myself to expose myself to new ideas is something that, again, I would say I really anchor myself to. And so one medium has been, for example, cinema, in which I've been able to do so. This May, I went to the Cannes Film Festival, which was a wonderful experience. And I went last year as well. And what I found is just being amongst these communities of people that love film and want to talk about film through the ideas that they present and the way in which they challenge people and the ability to watch a film and learn something new, whether it's about the world or about yourself or something to chew on around, whether it's moral decisions made within that film or challenging situations, both politically or contextually, that the film is able to grapple with, has been something that I think has given me a lot of illumination in my life, and finding another opportunity for me now to challenge myself to, I think, keep that community alive when I go back out into that professional world with both a network of people that I've met over the last 2 years, but then finding that time to be intentional with that is something that I'm setting myself as a challenge and something that I'd like to carry forward as well. So those I'd say kind of two big anchors that I've kind of set for myself.
And with that part as well, I'm starting to realize that one thing we share in common is, I guess, though we enjoy theater and acting and cinema and all that, how about for someone else who is not in SPLAC and not at all interested in cinema or acting or all these things? I think what we're trying to get at is the benefit of being able to put yourself out there in a space where things are pretty uncertain to just help simulate what that looks like in real life. So can you, off the top of your head, think of some examples of other things that someone else can do if they're not inclined to act or inclined to be in theater or cinema? What are some of the alternatives that you happen with?
Yeah, first let me maybe poorly answer your question by saying I think there's an element of patience. When we say act, there's already so many subgenres within that, right?
I'm saying.
Like intro to acting, or maybe it's voice acting. But then let's say what a lot of people have done when they're working is maybe they're doing a stand-up class, or maybe they're doing an improv comedy class. And there are so many ways to be in that uncomfortable situation where someone might love acting, but hate stand-up. And if they had chosen to do stand-up, they might have completely foregone being in that sort of environment. And so I think being patient to understand there might be various modes of something, and maybe only one or two of them will click, I think is important to encourage someone to not give up, I think, at that first, call it, hurdle, and to try, I think, an array of things before deciding whether or not something's right for them. And I think a similar analogy then relates to cinema, right? Like maybe you've watched a certain type of films, let's say you've watched a lot of horror films, you decided not for you. But maybe there's a lot of international cinema, maybe a specific director you really click with. And I'm not saying you need to watch 40 films to then decide you don't like cinema, but watching at least a few to try and understand what the type of genres might be, what some of the ideas might be, or styles of cinema, I think allow you to understand whether or not something's the right fit for you. But then I think that also then stumbles across in other ways of life, right? There's so many, whether it's apps or like community-based ways to stretch yourself these days. For example, whether it's going to literature readings or whether it's going to community meetings. And I think so many, for example, public institutions still do a good job at providing that support, whether it's your local library where you can find meetups.
Yes, local library.
It sounds silly, but I'm still a massive advocate and still use like my libraries all the time. And
Wait, how do you use a library? I actually need to, because when I think of library, I think of a library. I grew up in a small town. Library we had where I just go there, get a book, and leave. I can hear that like libraries actually have information in them, and like, crucial information that you can get, case studies and stuff. Like, I see that now, but I already think about it in the terms of books that I like to read or case studies that you can't get anywhere else, that are mad expensive somewhere else. Like, what is a library to you? I just genuinely, I need to know. I think other people might actually want to know as well.
Yeah. I think books are still the first and foremost thing. And I think what people maybe underappreciate is even you can get ebooks from the library. You can just having the ability not to have to pay for something and to dive into it. Back to my prior point, like literature is another key way I think people can stretch themselves to these ideas. And I think so fewer people read these days than previously. And I think that that's a massive shame and challenge, because I think people just maybe haven't encountered the right type of books for them. Like, I know I primarily read memoir and nonfiction. Other people I read primarily read, certain types of fiction. And there's a massive blend in ways people want to engage with literature. And some people just maybe haven't found the right type of literature for them that I would push people towards. And a library is a great way to do so. So
I'm going to challenge you.
Yeah, please.
I'm going to challenge you on that as well, because you and I have spent some time talking about the beauty of acting and theater, and now we're speaking about literature and how it's impacted both of our lives. But to someone else, that sounds like a luxury.
Sure.
To actually be able to sit down and read a book when you could be making more money, or you could be doing other things that seem to be, I guess, more profit bearing. The question, I don't think, is then that people found a book that works for them, or a genre that works for them. What's the incentive?
Yeah.
I think it's about how we paint the picture, because you and I can easily agree on the incentive of writing, being more knowledgeable, getting to know yourself a lot more, putting yourself out there. But for someone else who is just thinking in terms of more money, more this, less of that, I need to fix and sort my life out, what's the incentive to that person to actually go and read?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think a good challenge. And I think part of it is like this profit incentive that people might have. It's tough to maybe forego like that mental calculus in your mind. Obviously, you want to make enough money to create the life that you want to have for yourself and be able to sustain it. But I think being clear on yourself and kind of what that looks like, even in the short term, of what is enough and what do I need to sustain myself. Because I think, to your point, like the riches that we can gain from reading around the way it can illuminate other aspects of our life, I would argue that in that kind of overall calculus, even in kind of what's profit bearing, understanding yourself, understanding other people. And when I think about cinema, when I think about literature, one of the key things that I gain from that is you build empathy and you have the ability to better relate to other people. You have the ability to better understand what's going on in other people's world. And so when you think about then and it feels almost sinister to say, like, what's going to make you a good business person, empathy is a critical skill there. And I would argue...
Is that really empathy then?
Well, exactly, right? So that's why it feels maybe...
Do you actually care about the person, or you just like...
Right. And I would argue that there's likely a element of both, right? And that's to say, as you choose what it is you want to do in your career and what kind of impact you want to have, you can choose to be, call it, single-minded, and you can always make more money in your career. Maybe if you're in a certain line of finance, you're already making as much as humanly possible. But I would say eventually you have to make these choices in your career, particularly as you're thinking about starting a family down the road and you want to think about, how you want to balance different priorities in life. Someone's career and profession can be a very large portion of how they devote their mind share. But at the end of the day, you're still going to have to face what you do outside of that and yourself, and the way you then cultivate yourself and who you are and your identity is so important. And I would argue increasingly becomes more important. Let's say you want to have kids down the line. Do you want your kids to only have the value of, do you want them to make as much money as possible? Or do you want them to be well-rounded individuals? And for them to be well-rounded individuals, I would say that needs to start from yourself as to whether you're going to be a well-rounded individual yourself. And building that empathy and understanding yourself, I think, is a key aspect to that. And that can only be through that investment. So, for example, at the end of a day, I think we all have elements of time, varying amounts of time, to your point, around how we want to spend that time. And for some people, maybe it's watching the same television show that they've already seen because that allows them to unwind, which I think is beneficial and allows them to de-stress. For others, maybe it's cooking. For others, maybe it's reading. For others, it's socializing with friends at the pub or doing something else. And we all have these decisions to make. And that's not to say, going home at the end of a work day and just choosing to read and then watching a film is the best way of spending your time. But I think as individuals, we should think about how are we cultivating ourselves in the way that's who we want to be and to what's important to us. And for you, building this empathy and enriching yourself in this world is important, and I would argue time worth spending. And what I would say to others that maybe don't do so in the same way, it's give it a try and see in which it's then impacting other aspects of your life. And I think it comes back to what I was previously saying, that there are so many different flavors of these ways of enriching ourselves. And like, life is a pick and mix, if you will. We're always going to be taking different aspects of what's available to us in a way that will allow us to grow. But we all need challenge, and we all need to be able to find that we're continuing to grow ourselves. And to me, that has been a key element to that, which is why, going back to almost how we make decisions, it's allowed me to make different types of decisions in more effective ways as a result of that. And understanding how other people make decisions, you gain a huge amount of that through going to your library, reading these books, watching these films, and that then plays into that expertise that you have. And that's not to say you'll have exactly the same contextual decisions that you make, but it is to say that you're learning about how other people are making decisions and then thinking about whether you would do the same in certain situations. And I think that then has several consequences around what you want to carry forward within your own life.
And that's what you just said. Everything you just said there has tied into the main thing that I've been trying to get at, which is, okay, let's say we say that there's theater, and theater gives us this, and then this gives us that, and this gives us that part is the part where it's up to you as an individual to at least, because no one else can do it for you, to at least, I believe, possibly, to figure out what actually matters to you. And one thing that I've realized is that we're constantly moving, and we mistake moving for progress. That's because you're moving doesn't mean you're progressing.
Right.
And I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and they asked me a question about if I know whether or not I'm doing the right thing, if I know I'm on the right path and all that. And I mean, that answer, I think there's a lot of questions that we can have. Some don't have answers, but that answer, I think, is answerable by yourself. And the reason I said yes to her is that I don't think it's possible for you to lose at being yourself. It sounds cheesy and all of that, but there's no way for you to lose at being yourself. But I mean, there's no way that you can lose at being yourself if you know who you are.
Right.
But if you don't know who you are, you can lose every day. And I think the main part of it that people just don't want to hear is that you need to figure it out. And that sounds harsh, but there are some things that we can figure out with the help of other people. Like, the library isn't the source of you figuring it out, but it is going to help you in some way.
Yeah.
The acting is not what's gonna like give you the answer, but it's gonna reveal some part of some part of the journey. Like, I've got a mentor who used to say the path illuminates itself as you walk it. But which path are you walking? And the more you start to, the first you pick a path and you walk the path, and it sounds very abstract, but what I'm trying to say is that I'm like, okay, listen, I am battling with being on the runway at long jump in a competition and totally just not knowing what I'm doing, like freezing. So why is that? Is it because I don't know? Is it because I'm unprepared? What is it? Okay, you figure that out. Okay, maybe it's because of that. Maybe it's because I don't know how to deal with nerves. Okay, fine. Maybe let me take that path. No, that path is not illuminating itself. How can I help myself with that? Maybe I can take an acting class. Okay, wait, let me take an acting class. Okay, that's helped me so much. Wait, I actually kind of like this. Do I like it more than jumping? I don't know. I'll figure that out later.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Wait, I've learned this about myself. I've realized that, Sarah, my instructor, said you must never judge a character. I'm like, why would I do that? And then I figured, okay, I'm judging my character. What does that mean for my life? That means that I'm going through life with this predisposition of how I expect things to be, and if things are not the way that I expect them to be, I'm going to automatically judge them. Does that make me a bad person? I don't know if it makes me a bad person. Who knows? But at least you figure things out along the way, and that's exactly what I've been trying to get at with the whole conversation and the whole part of making decisions and the poem itself, that we wish that we knew the reason why we made certain choices, but sometimes that's not what we want. Right. You can wish that you want everything to be sorted out, but if it's all sorted out and there's no more problems, there's no more consultant, there's no more engineer. We're cooked, we're done. So that's what I'm trying to get at. And when it comes to different parts that people can take, that's how I would approach it. I would say, listen, figure out what some of your, I guess, dark parts are. things about yourself you're not proud, things that you're not proud of, that you certain characteristics that you carry that you're not proud of, and figure out, okay, like how am I gonna go about that? So that's how I've seen it, and I've seen you, I guess, do that as well, especially when it comes to the peer reviews and the feedback would give each other. Like you would actually listen to feedback because you were actually trying to make a change, and that is something that is not specific to theater. It's not specific to being a consultant, I don't think, and it's not specific to anything. It's just something that a character that you carry, in any space that you go to. So I guess, yeah, that's all I have to say on that part. But what you said really it really helped illuminate that part of my brain, and part of my brain, like I know which part it is. It really just shed light, something that I've been thinking about a lot. And yeah, it's really special that you said that.
No, thank you for sharing that. And maybe my question to you is,
Okay.
what would it take for it to be actor, engineer, athlete instead of engineer, actor? When can you start putting the
Okay, what does it take to do what? So I didn't get that.
when will you start calling yourself actor, engineer, as opposed to the engineer, actor? When will you accept that acting maybe is something that you put before other things, or will you continue to keep things in flux in terms of aspects of your identity?
The thing is, you've asked me a challenging question before, and this is not the most challenging one, so
Right.
I get to breathe. I can answer this right now. Of course, I can answer it right now. I don't need time to think about this one. So when will I do that? I would say when the acting bears fruit that other people can see.
Okay.
And I'm not ashamed about that.
Yeah.
So think about it like this. If you grow up in a typical Zimbabwean household, it's either you're a student, you're a great student, and if you're not good at that, at least be a good athlete.
Right.
But if you're both, it's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you gonna choose? And people would give me these would you rather questions and like this or that. I'm like, listen, why can't I have both? Like, why do I have to choose? And that's the intention that I have. Like, you can call it greed, you can call it whatever you want, but if you can get everything, why not get it?
Yeah.
Like, why not? Why are you limiting yourself? So I would start to reference myself as, actor, engineer when that starts to bear fruit, because I know it's important to be genuine. I try to believe that I'm a genuine person, but also people think that they are better than who they really are. Everyone thinks they're good. I mean, some people think they're great people. I don't know. Some because of that, I have nothing to say about that. But I will start referencing myself as actor engineer when the fruit is very visible, because with with a lot of things that you say and actions that you take and how you put yourself forward, people have certain barriers, not barriers, but certain ways they've tried to protect themselves as they go about the world, as they go through the world. That's what I believe. As someone progresses through life, it's not that you're gonna be like vulnerable and open all the time. There's certain things that you're probably gonna have biases towards, just to protect yourself. If you walk down the street and you see someone who's like looking a little bit shady, you're not gonna be like, this is a human being. Like, hey, like no, like you're gonna like make sure you like stay away or don't look whatever, because just protecting yourself. So the more I can reach people with my acting in ways that they can understand, the more I can tell them about it. As long as people still have that same predisposition of Hollywood or whatever, like, then I'm just gonna keep it on the down low for now, because there's no point in me coming to you and then telling you that I'm this, then I have to explain myself. I'll just tell you, hey, I'm an engineer, athlete, whatever, bam. You leave me alone. I mean, when this starts to work out, I mean, it is working out.
Right.
I'll tell you, hey, listen, I'm also this. Oh, wow, that's because people, yeah, that's how people are. So that's a long-winded answer.
At all?
Yeah, I know people say to be rather than to seem, but I don't think human beings are as practical as they think they are. So until people fully understand it, there's no point in me saying it.
No, I appreciate that. And I think I like what you said. It's not greed to pursue things well, and put your heart and soul into several things that are important to you, because these things complement each other more than I think people give credit to sometimes. And you doing well in school, and you being an actor, and you being an engineer, and you doing the long jump, I think all of these things feed into who you are, and I think quite a special way. And I think that's what creates uniqueness as well, and that sense of fulfillment. If you only did one of them, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I suspect it would be less entertaining or less of a filled life than doing all of these things that can bring you joy in different parts and also complement the mind and allow you to think about different disciplines and what's required to succeed in each of them, because obviously there's specificity. There's also probably a lot of overlap in terms of the way in which you prep your mind and your mentality to succeed. And I think that drive will take you far in any realm of life, whether you're underwriting, whether you are doing long jump, or whether you are in the next big Hollywood film. I'm sure that you'll be able to relate all of those skills and everything that they teach you there as well.
And I try to explain that to people a lot, but it just all ties into each other. And I have a question for you, and it's going to be a vague question.
Sure.
But I have the answer to the question.
Okay.
Of course, I have the answer. I have the answer to the question, but it's my answer. And I don't know why I'm giving such a big, long prelude to the question, because it's very simple. I don't know why I'm doing that. But the question is, do you see yourself as a system?
Ooh, it's a great question. I wish I had a super poetic answer. I think to an extent, yes, in terms of how I guess I would define a system is something that's maybe trained to a degree where there's a way in which I approach problems. And when I think about my inputs, which maybe are the people around me and the data that I have access to, what I'm trying to achieve out of it, I think you kind of have, and I'm not an engineer, so don't correct me on any technicalities here, but I almost think
you're on the right track so far.
Okay.
And yeah, let me just say that.
Okay. And I think sometimes for a certain system, there's maybe call it a closed system where maybe it has a very specific outcome. I've lost the track.
No. You're really trying to under promise so you can over impress.
Okay.
When you said what you just said something. What did you just say? You said a word. What's the word you said just now?
Closed system?
Exactly.
Okay.
So you know what you're talking about. I don't know yet, but you don't know what
Okay. I definitely don't know what I'm talking
about.
about.
What you're talking about.
I've taken 0 engineering classes in my life, so maybe it was something that I should have done.
It's big in economics as well.
Yeah. But that's to say, is a system continually malleable or changing? Maybe to an extent, but maybe I'm not at this point, right? Like I'm someone who I think has a sense of what it is that gives me joy, how I want to impact the people around me, what it is that I want to achieve. Maybe not in the rest of my life, but at least kind of in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think I have those goals and I have a sense of how I want to attribute myself to try and achieve them. And so the extent to which I'm systematic about that, I would say is something that I do put some stock into, because I have a sense then of how I want to balance like key things in my life. And to say that I want to be fully open to change every day, I think wouldn't be fair to the fact that I think I've gained expertise in terms of what I feel is the right way of delegating that time around where I push myself and how I set goals and how I give myself downtime and how I try and juggle the social relationships that are important in my life. And so to that end, like I may be my own unique system, but it's something that has been cultivated, but something that I think now I'm able to take this data, and as we relate this back to decision making, I feel more confident now than maybe I've ever felt in my life around what I do put a lot of thought into and what I don't. And I would almost say that is a more systemized way or systematic way in which I feel I'm able to live my life in a way that I am able to achieve my goals and bring myself joy.
That's a good answer.
I'm waiting for you to challenge me.
I wasn't going to challenge you.
But yeah, I would love to hear your answer as well.
You want me to challenge you? Do you want my answer?
I would love your answer.
I can give you both.
Sure.
So I'm going to challenge you. So first I need to find something so that I can challenge you with, because I agree with all of it. You've given me a really hard task now. How can I challenge you on that? Okay, let me ask you. Let me just try to be a smart ass here. So if you're a system, open or closed, who cares? You have an input, yeah. You have a stock where you keep the stuff and processes happen. You have an output, okay. Are you an efficient system? And if you are an efficient system, what does that actually mean in the context of your own life?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it makes me almost think to like this ignorant point that you brought up earlier, or like the ability to overthink things.
I thought you're saying I'm ignorant.
No, not at all. If you're, I think, kind of in the first 10 minutes, you talked about how almost ignorance can be bliss sometimes for decisions.
Yeah, I wasn't
because, yeah, and this almost makes me think of this because I think particularly, you're an undergrad at a really strong school.
You always
you're always overthinking things, and not you, but abstract you. People want to achieve the most that they can, and sometimes we maybe trick ourselves into thinking we're inefficient. What does being efficient mean to be a human? I would argue at a core level, not a huge amount. And I think maybe it's a cop-out answer to say like it varies depending on the person. And I think that's okay, because I think you just need to decide what it is that is important to you and what it is you want to do. In your case, maybe it's finding time to do acting. Maybe it's time to do your engineering and to do your athletics. For me, maybe it's trying to do a strong job professionally, be able to sustain my social life as I want to do, and make sure that I have time for some of the other mental stimulus that gives me the joy. And the extent to which I'm able to do those things, to me, is efficient. Am I spending X amount of hours or so volunteering? Am I able to do additional things? Am I able to do additional jobs? I'm not. And I think understand that. And I think there's always more that you can do as a human, but you also want to make sure that you have time to sleep. I also value doing nothing for a little bit and just watching some World Cup on the television and not feeling like
which I disturbed you from.
Not at all. Not at all. I think that's to say, for me now, I feel efficient because I have an understanding of the goals that are important to me. And I feel I'm able to achieve them with the balance that I've calibrated in my life. In college, I would argue there are times where maybe I was inefficient, where I was maybe trying to do too much, and maybe I was doing more or feeling like I was being productive more. But I would argue that the goals that I had laid out maybe were, I don't want to say too ambitious, because I think that's not fair on what ambition truly is. I think maybe just too spread and inauthentic to what would provide me with the joy that is important in my life. And that's to say, could I be more efficient? Maybe I could be more productive, but I would argue I'm being efficient towards the goals that I've laid out for myself.
That's a wise answer. And it also ties into, you look at me like I'm about to say something crazy. I am not about to say anything crazy. Maybe I am. So you said it's specific to, I'm going to paraphrase.
Sure.
It's specific to what your goals are. And there that theme comes in again of being able to identify what something looks like for you.
Yeah.
We have clear definitions of certain things, like certain words and phrases, certain terms. When it comes to yourself, I wouldn't say you have to define it, but to some extent, you kind of do.
Yeah.
And we speak about this. We've been talking about decision making for a couple minutes now. And the one thing that I wouldn't say you missed, but that is assumed, is that you're able to fully identify the problem. And I say this to a lot of people, like, if you can't identify the problem, what are you trying to solve? And I think tying it back to the parts on the efficiency and inefficiency, you can consistently feel inadequate, like you're not making progress even though you're moving. And that in itself, I wouldn't say could be resolved, but could also just be as a result of you not actually identifying what something is for you. And I guess one of the last type of questions of this sort that I'll ask you is, I'm gonna start a little prelude to this, is, okay, so for example, you identify a problem, you figure out what some of the possible outcomes could be, right? Obviously, you figure out what some of the possible outcomes are. You figure out what's the chance of each outcome happening, and based off that, you pick which one you want, which one is most likely out of those, which one is least likely, what's the spread of the likeliness and all that type of stuff. And that seems like a very practical and solid template to use when figuring out how to make a decision on something. For you, do you think you use the same approach that you use in consulting because this is the approach that I think I use.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to figure things out. And it's not always, black and white. It's not always ones and zeros. Like even me being here, speaking with you could seem like a waste of time to someone else who just cares about getting a job or something right now, or who only cares about, I guess, making more money right now. I could be trading or doing something right now this time, but I mean it's Sunday, so no.
After hours.
After hours. You don't want to trade after. So you just keep that. So yeah. How did you figure out what things matter to you?
Yeah.
And do you think you've used the same approach with your work?
Yeah. Maybe I'll start professionally. I would say that approach does make sense to an extent. Like you want to be able to understand the risk of things before giving someone a path forward. And to understand the risk of things, you obviously need a good amount of data and you want to feel like you're able to calibrate. But also it kind of depends on that goal, right? Everyone, and by everyone, maybe it's a company that you're consulting for, has a different risk appetite. And for certain things, maybe you just need more of a capital investment, or maybe you need different resources in place in order to achieve something. But understanding the risk, I think, is really important in order to calibrate what the right decision moving forward is. But where I would say it deviates for me is personally, and I think particularly over the last 2 years, I would say, this has been advice that I've shared more, as I think you should and could take more of a gamble on yourself to achieve things, even if risky. So to give you examples of this, maybe this is someone choosing not to apply for a job because the likelihood is so low, or feeling like they maybe shouldn't take a specific opportunity, or taking an opportunity when something else is in the pipeline because they feel there's a low chance on getting it. And what I've found is I think there's a lot of benefit sometimes on really betting on yourself to make the most of opportunities in the pipeline, to understand that yes, you can take a chance and it's not going to work out, but there might be other job opportunities down the line. And sometimes that upside of taking on a little bit of risk to do what's going to be most beneficial for you, or to be, maybe it's the right opportunity for you, or the right internship, or whether it's, a competition or an acting role that maybe you didn't think you would get. And maybe it requires a lot of upfront time and investment to audition and a slim chance. But the advice of just betting on yourself and still going through that process, even if it doesn't pay those immediate dividends, I think you learn a lot in that process as a result. And there is significant upside despite the risk. That I think the mental modal calculation shouldn't just be, this is the risk of doing X versus doing Y, therefore it's not worth doing X. I think that as humans, so much of our learning process needs to come from those failures and taking on a certain amount of risk to really stretch ourselves to be the best people that we can be. And so on that personal level of decision making, I think that we should have that higher risk appetite to really kind of stretch ourselves in ways that maybe you wouldn't advise a client on professionally.
A big part of that is the practical part. So we mentioned, okay, you make a decision, you think about this, you think about that, you do this, you figure out what the outcomes are, and then execution.
Right.
And that's what it comes down to. And even when it comes to risk and risk appetite, there can be a likelihood of certain events happening, certain events not happening. And how you truly test that is by making a decision and seeing what actually happens, because there's so many other underlying factors that we may not be able to account for calculatively or just qualitatively, just by thinking about things. So for yourself, the nature of your work is, I wouldn't say theoretical, but a lot of the time you're more reliant on the data and maybe sometimes experiences that have occurred in other companies and other spaces. But a big part of results, or actually showing results, is clearly being able to execute them. You've probably worked on multiple different cases and worked with so many people and learned so much. How are some ways in which you think you've been able to exercise the more practical part of actually being on the ground? I know acting is one of them, but are there any other parts of, I guess, your life or your work that have really helped you sharpen or develop that practical entrepreneurial, go-getter mentality when it comes to actually getting out there and doing something.
Yeah, and it's a weird question to answer, and I'll explain why. Just in terms of, I think, like our life is filled with so many of like these little moments, and I think develop some of these skills. And I think it, to your acting point, it's really about like these soft skills that we build. I think in MBA terms, sometimes it sounds a little fluffy. It's like your communication, and it's your resilience, and it's your grit. But I really do think that's true. I think when I think about the most formative aspects of at least like my professional career, it kind of boils down to a lot of like key decisions or key risks I've taken or key exogenous events that maybe impacted things. And I've learned a lot from that. So for example, when I was talking about my career path, I started consulting, and the company I was working for essentially went under because of the pandemic about 5 months in my career, right? Completely unexpected. And I had to very quickly change tact, and it was hard trying to find a job during the pandemic when very few companies were hiring. And I went from a kind of desk consulting job to a warehouse job. And I was suddenly working, I was kind of like a site manager, if you will, for a warehouse. And I learned a really different mental mode around what it takes to manage hourly employees and understand what it takes to motivate them versus what it takes to motivate college students. When I was in college, I managed a coffee shop, for example, and that was a very different experience, but also really lucrative in terms of the wealth of experience I was able to build in terms of what does leadership look like? How can I display the right level of optics in terms of business, but also being able to create a community for employees in a specific way? And then when you think back to analytical skills I built, trying a type of analysis, maybe it's a tool that you haven't used before, but jumping into it and being open to what you can gain from the pain it takes to figure out the right way of doing something, all require a lot of learning, and I think upskilling, and a level of resilience and grit to allow you to become proficient in something. And to your earlier point, right, you kind of thread the needle between all of these experiences. And when I think about what adds weight to those experiences, it's the unexpectedness that comes from anyone's career, and being open to that unexpectedness and having the right mindset to that, I think, is the most valuable thing. So that, to your earlier point, like you want to keep moving, but you also want to ensure that you're extracting value and you're achieving your goals as you are continuing to move. And that allows you to do so, I think, by making sure that you have that right mentality as these things both happen to you, but you're achieving things along the way.
Man, they really teach you guys how to answer questions. Huh?
Oh,
No, that was good. And I want to just take some time to slow down, wrap it up. And as we do wrap up, if you have anything you want to say, any questions that you have for me, anything you want to say, anything at all, it could be anything and everything.
yeah.
Just go ahead.
Yeah, so maybe a question for you, I guess.
Okay.
Curious.
Yeah, all right.
You talked about how you could be trading right now, could be doing something else, but instead you're choosing to have this podcast series. So maybe let me ask you, like, what is the ultimate goal of the podcast, or what allowed you to feel this was something that I wanted to do? You decided to ask a graduate student to be on a podcast. What was maybe your goal or your
student, actually, former graduate student.
Yes, no longer.
No longer back.
Now just unemployed before I start work.
Exactly, back to the market. So just to clarify, your question is, what's the motivation behind me doing this?
Yes,
That's the main one?
that's the main question.
Okay, there's another one, but okay, fine. What's the main motivation? And you also mentioned other alternatives, why I could be doing something else. I mean, for a very long time. Okay, I mean, did I explain why I titled it 30 Degrees? Did I explain why?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, so let me explain why. So my dad is a design and technology teacher. So he teaches like computer design and like woodwork and metalwork and all that type of stuff. So I'm the youngest of 3 siblings, or a brother or a sister. Fantastic people. Everybody in my family is creative. I'm not gonna go into everything. So here it is. So I was about 12. Was that 12? 12 years old, about to go to high school. Our high school is 13 to
Right.
to upper 6. Sitting in the living room, Dad pulls out a piece of paper and a drawing board, tapes it on, and he's like, "Okay, today you're gonna learn how to draw." Wow, fantastic! I've been waiting for this moment my whole life, and I was just imagining all the great images that I can bring to life, the great ideas that I can start to convey on pen and pencil. And for a week or so, he made me draw straight lines only. I didn't draw any special image. So this is the piece of paper I would do. So it would actually be like this. Let me come like this. The paper would be like this, and drawing board, usually an A3 piece of paper. Then you draw straight lines upwards, drawing straight lines horizontally. Like perfect. Until each line is parallel, and I'd have to get it correct. Do these lines straight, diagonal lines. Until I had to master that before he actually told me how to draw. And with an isometric drawing projection where it's used 30-degree lines, 60-degree lines, 90-degree lines, 180 to just draw images. And that's the first drawing system that I learned how to use. So I was going to say life is like drawing, but I'm not going to say that. The reason why I'm here is because how I said everything ties into each other. This is a space where I can communicate my ideas, other people's ideas, and be able to connect those in such a way that even if they agree or not, they can still convey some sort of or show some sort of image. And that's why I'm doing this, because I think ultimately this is what we try and do on a day-to-day basis. The same way we use theater without noticing it. The same way we use our bodies to communicate things without noticing it. I think the moment you start to notice what those things are, what some of those factors are, then you probably fall in love with it. And I've really fallen in love with being able to communicate ideas clearly, concisely, in a way that others can understand. Not to sound smart, not to sound like you know more than someone else, but to bridge that gap of understanding. I mentioned the walls that people put up in their lives on a day-to-day basis as they go about their lives to, I guess, protect themselves or be successful, whatever that can look like to whoever that person is. And just, I wouldn't say break those down, but see through those. And I'll say that's more valuable than, I wouldn't say more valuable, but it's it's got its own special value that is different from running down the tarmac or whatever, like the rubber, whatever we use, the track. Asphalt. So I don't know what it is. I don't know what is that. But whatever it is, running down and jumping into a sandbox and jumping the furthest and getting a medal for that, or learning how to play a song and performing for people and they stand up and cheer, or getting a good test score, and all these things are just, there's also like some gold medal syndrome to them as well. You feel, I won't say you feel terrible afterwards, but I can't say it gets old. It's great. I love it. But at the same time, it doesn't give me what this gives me, which is a way for me to be able to communicate with people. And that's why I'm here. And it's ties back into figuring out what's most important for you. And this is important for me. So I believe that people can make time for the things that they actually love doing. And I love doing this, and that's why I'm here.
Amazing. No, thank you for sharing that. I think it's great to have something like this. It's also yours, and that you're creating, and that you're, between the poem and the questions, it's like there's a level of preparation, and to your point, but also an element of being reactive, right?
Yeah.
Maybe my answers weren't all you're expecting, maybe they were, but regardless of that, it's that fluency and the skills that you're able to build as a result of that. And I've never been on a podcast before. It's exciting, but also in of itself, like I'm sure people that have been on podcasts a lot have a different type of fluency, right? And so even for myself, this has been a great learning experience around, maybe this answer has been way too long and all we wanted, versus, if I was to re-answer some question, maybe I would have done it somehow differently. And I'm sure the questions that you've asked me today have been so thought-provoking and I think so rich as it relates to my own life that I will leave here today probably thinking about them a little bit more and thinking about what I would calibrate or what I would change. And that for me has given me a lot of joy being on this podcast. So thank you for the questions and engagement and wisdom. It's been a massive privilege to be able to be on this podcast. So thank you.
No, I mean, thanks to you, really. I mean, it's an honor to have you here as well. And that whole part of being able to refine things, being able to refine comes from doing. And that's all learning at the end of the day. We're all here for the first time. No one's lived this life before. I don't think anyone either. I'm not really big on reincarnation. But I think we're all here for the first time. So yeah, and as we continue to refine, it's also an opportunity for me. I mean, there's always, and it's like asked a question and I'm like, okay, I don't know how I would answer that question. So good luck, Steve. I don't know how you're gonna answer that question because I don't know how I would. And one big trick with me, I don't know if I should be sharing this, but if I ask someone a difficult question, a very easy way for them to get back at me is by asking me the same question. So yeah, but Steve, thank you so much.
Of course.
Uh, pleasure to have you here, and yeah, hopefully we can play some futsal soon.
Yes.
And hopefully I don't disappoint you.
I think you won't. I think you'll be able to hold your own. So excited to see you out there on the pitch.
Yeah, yesterday was horrors. I just did not know how bad I'd fallen off. So
You'll pick it back up quickly.
pick it back up quickly. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.